Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue talking about poetry. In our last video, we discussed haiku. Today, we're going to discuss rhymed poetry and free verse poetry. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we're going to begin by talking about free verse poetry. Now, remember, we said free verse poetry doesn't need to follow any particular pattern or any particular rhyme scheme. So it doesn't have to rhyme like a rhymed poem does. So free verse poems can tell a story, and that's called a narrative poem, but they don't have to. Not every free verse poem tells a story. Some free verse poems simply capture a moment. So we're going to look at an example here, and this is The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. It says, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens. So I think this is a really interesting free verse poem because it's very short, it's very simple. And I think this is a really great way to teach poetry to our young writers. So, first of all, he says, so much depends upon the wheelbarrow. So, what depends upon the wheelbarrow? Well, I picture a farm or perhaps a log cabin, somewhere where people really need to do physical work to accomplish the day's tasks. And to do that, they need their wheelbarrow. And without it, they wouldn't be able to get things done. So much depends upon that wheelbarrow. And you notice here, I think this is really interesting, the way the poet has four stanzas, each with two lines. A stanza with two lines is called a couplet. So we've got four couplets, and this spacing helps us to really focus on each element of the poem. So in the first stanza, the poet does a good job creating suspense by telling us so much depends upon. Depends upon what? And then we see a red wheelbarrow. So he gets us to focus on important scenes, important aspects of the scene. The color of the wheelbarrow, the fact that it's wet, and then finally the chickens. So it is a very simple scene, and Williams could have chosen this for a variety of reasons. Remember that poets look at what's around them and they choose to share whatever they're feeling or whatever scene they're observing in nature. So that may have been why. Perhaps this wheelbarrow is very special to him. We don't know. So one thing I like is he says the word glazed with rain. Now remember, we said so much depends upon this wheelbarrow. So it's got to be strong, it's got to be tough, it's got to be resilient. And glaze is something that's hard, it's resistant. And in ceramics, when we glaze something, when we glaze pottery, it's done by fire. So this wheelbarrow has really been through a lot. That's what I'm taking from this poem. And it's got to be something that's really strong, really resilient because it needs to do all this work on the farm. So let's go to another great poem. This is a poem I really love, Fog by Carl Sandberg. And in this poem, the poet compares fog to a small cat. So let's go ahead and read this together. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. So when he talks about the fog being like a cat, I think this is a really great comparison because cats can enter a room and we don't even know they're there. They come in so quietly. And it's the same with fog. Fog isn't like thunder. It doesn't have any loud sound that announces its arrival. So fog comes in very silently and often very slowly. just like a cat. So I do like Sundberg's deliberate approach to this poem because what he's describing is fog and something that moves very slowly, very deliberately. So I really picture a dark, gray, foggy morning by the ocean. He says it's looking over harbor and city. I know a lot of coastal areas that I've lived in or visited. We get a lot of fog in the morning, and I can really picture that when I read this poem. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at a different type of free verse poem. This is a narrative poem, and it's written by one of my favorite poets, probably my favorite poet, Robert Frost. And I do just want to take this moment in the video to let you know that if you like this lesson and you want to get this lesson and the graphic organizers that go with it, you can find the link to this lesson and to my entire creative writing course in the video description. They will link you to my TPT store where you can purchase them. For my students from Myanmar, again, please don't purchase this material. Please just send me a message in Signal and I will send it to you for free. So let's take a look at the pasture. I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by the mother. It's so young. It totters when she licks it with her tongue. I shan't be gone long. You come too. So one of the things that I noticed right away is Frost's use of repetition. He's speaking directly to the reader saying, I'm not going to be gone long. Come with me. So he's inviting the reader to come and have this experience with us. But the thing that we notice here is that he's telling a story, right? We've got a setting. It's the pasture. It's springtime. He's going to rake the leaves away. I imagine that this brook or this creek is clogged up by the leaves that have fallen and lay there, perhaps under snow throughout the winter. And he needs to clear those leaves away to get the water moving again. He's going to fetch that little calf. And I love the way he uses a lot of descriptive language here. Really descriptive, strong verb, totters. When I think of something tottering, I think of it being very weak, very unable to stand up. So we've got the narrator as the character. We've got the calf and the mother as characters. The other animals are characters in the poem. As we said, it's set in the pasture. And we see these chores that he's doing throughout the springtime. So the author, the poet really does tell a story through this free verse poem. So one thing I do is I try to treat narrative poems just the way I would treat any narrative that's told through prose. I give my students a graphic organizer and I ask them, please complete this organizer. So you can go ahead and read through this poem and you can complete the graphic organizer. Tell me who the characters are, what the setting is. Remember, the setting is where and when the story takes place. And tell me about the plot. Tell me about the sequence of events as we move through this poem. Okay, so let's go ahead now and let's take a look at rhymed poetry. And I've got more Robert Frost. I love this poem, A Minor Bird. Here, we've got a rhymed poem with a very particular rhyme scheme, and I'm going to read that for us here. I've wished a bird would fly away and not sing by my house all day. Have clapped my hands at him from the door when it seemed as if I could bear no more. The fault must partly have been in me. The bird was not to blame for his key. And of course, there must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. So if we look at the rhyming words in this poem, I see away and day, both rhyme. Door and more, both rhyme. Me and key, and then wrong and song. So, when I take a moment and I reflect on this poem and I look at the problem that the poet's dealing with, he's really just annoyed by this bird that's singing. And then he says, the fault must partly have been in me. So he realizes the real problem is just he's a little short-tempered. He doesn't know why he's trying to get rid of a bird that's just singing. He said, there must be something wrong in wanting to silence any song. So you shouldn't try to stop a bird from singing. Perhaps you should take the time to appreciate it. So when we talk about rhyme scheme, we're talking about the pattern of the rhymed words. So in this poem, we've got an AABB rhyme scheme: away, day, door, and more. And we can have a variety of different rhyme schemes. You might see ABAB rhyme schemes in poems. So let's take a look at another poem. This is another Robert Frost poem. I've got several Robert Frost poems here. As I said, he's my favorite poet. So here, this is stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So no, though, and snow all rhyme. Here does not. So it's A, B, A. The way we figure out rhyme scheme is when we see that first line, that first letter is going to be A. If the next line has the same ending sound, we're going to give it the same letter, A. So no and no. I'm going to give though an A because it sounds just like that first rhyme, there. When I go on to the next line, here is a new sound. So I'm going to give it the next letter, B. Then when I go to the subsequent line, I see snow. Sounds just like no and no, so I'm going to give it an A. If it was the last sound was something that rhymed with here, perhaps fear, then I would give it a B. Okay, so here I have The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. This is my favorite poem. I want to talk briefly about stanzas. Stanzas in poetry are like paragraphs in prose. Stanzas aren't indented. We don't always have those transition words that signal movement between paragraphs. They're simply separated by white space. And they're different than paragraphs. Remember, a paragraph has to express one big idea. It's a collection of related sentences that express an idea. That's not always the case in poetry. So when we look at this, we see there are 4 stanzas here. Okay, so if you want to, you can go ahead and read The Road Not Taken, and you can go over these comprehension questions related to this poem. I also have some questions that you can discuss either with a group of students or with some friends or colleagues to help you interact with this genre of writing. So here is the pasture, and I've got some questions for discussion. And of course, I want to move my students towards writing poetry. So we've got a graphic organizer that moves us towards writing one of these styles of poetry, either free verse poetry or rhymed poetry. Now, you can write a free verse poem that tells a story. Remember, that's a narrative poem. You can write a rhymed poem that tells a story. Or you can write a free verse or a narrative poem about anything you like. It can be about something you've observed in nature. It could be something that you've experienced, an emotion, just something that's important to you. So we are going to continue in our next video where we're going to be talking about elements of poetry. So please, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. And you can visit my TPT store in the link in the description to this video. And I'll see you next time.